So this right here is the very first iPhone 16e here in Alaska. And since it's the very first one, they were kind enough to let me pick the phone case of my choice, and they gave it to me for free, which I thought was very, very cool. The iPhone 16e is Apple's newest device that supports Apple Intelligence. It's supposed to have great battery life and a new C1 chip. However, it's a device that doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. While technically it's the cheapest iPhone that Apple sells, because it lacks some features, it doesn't really feel cheap at all. But I decided to buy it anyway, so hopefully you don't have to. I spent 24 hours with the iPhone 16e to find out who I think this phone is for and what the heck the E stands for. But before anything else, if you found this video to be helpful in any way, please consider subscribing. The goal this year is to reach 100K and we're only about 60% of the way there. The iPhone 16e feels pretty similar to the iPhone 16 in hand, which is a good thing. It has an aluminum frame and a matte glass back that comes in either white or black. But they claim it still has a 4 times better drop performance than older iPhones, while still being dust and water resistant. The other difference you'll notice design-wise are the thicker bezels. The 16e has a notch as opposed to a dynamic island, and I'm kind of impartial on this because of who I think the phone is for. But what do you guys think? Should they have included the dynamic island on this phone anyway? The 16e has a 6.1-inch Super Retina XDR display, which is still one of the best screens on a smartphone. It's definitely enjoyable for everyday use and consuming content, and it also has great speakers. However, the iPhone 16e only has 1200 nits of peak brightness versus 1600 nits on the iPhone 16. Not only that, the iPhone 16 can go down to 1 nit of brightness, which makes it more comfortable to view at night or in dark environments, which is definitely worth noting. One of the biggest things Apple introduced in the 16e is their very first modem called the C1. It's supposedly the most powerful and efficient modem, and because of this, they were able to rework the internals of the 16e and fit a bigger battery. So despite it being a 6.1-inch device, it now has up to 26 hours of video playback versus the 22 hours of the iPhone 16, which I think is super impressive. And during my first day of use, I got pretty close to about 7 hours of screen time. I had a full charge around 7:30 p.m. on Friday, and my phone still had 18% 28 hours later, which I thought was really good. One thing I'm really bummed about is not only the lack of MagSafe on this phone, but also the lack of Qi2 support. This means you can only get 7.5 watt of charging speed compared to the 25 watts on the iPhone 16, so it's still better to charge using the USB-C port, so you can get 50% in 30 minutes of charging when using a 20 watt power adapter. On another note, it's nice to see Apple put the A18 chip on the iPhone 16e. Even though it has one less GPU core than the iPhone 16, I have not perceived any performance difference. I was able to play Warzone Mobile pretty smoothly, I tested playing AC Mirage on it, and honestly, it performed just as well. One thing most people associate with iPhones is having a great camera, and it's good that the iPhone 16e has that. It has a single 48 megapixel camera, so no ultra wide or macro, but it takes sharp and detailed photos. Colors look great, skin tones are pleasing and accurate, and that's really all you need most of the time from a smartphone. Compared to the 16 Pro, the photos look slightly less sharp when you look at the fine details, but for taking everyday photos, it's not going to matter that much. What's surprising is the colors on the 16e looks more pleasing and accurate to me. Take a look at the color of the book here. It's more vibrant and punchy, and the overall scene on the 16e has a warmer look, which is more accurate to how the scene was when the photo was taken. Even though the iPhone 16e only has one lens, it can take a 2x photo without losing quality, which is really nice to have, especially when you just need a little bit more reach when taking a photo. However, because it has a smaller sensor compared to the iPhone 16 or the 16 Pro, it doesn't do as well in less than ideal lighting environments. It struggles a little bit more in comparison, and because it doesn't have a sensor shift optical image stabilization, it's more prone to capturing blurry photos when shooting moving subjects. And the same is true when you're shooting at night. The 16e struggles quite a bit. Just take a look at this photo. There's almost no separation between me and the trees in the background. My hair is completely blended in. You can't see the details of my shirt anymore. And most importantly, my face looks flat. Even if you turn on night mode, you still don't get those details back, even though the image looks brighter as a whole. If you love attending concerts or taking photos of your kids at events, the lack of a telephoto lens is definitely something to consider. I was surprised to see though that the iPhone 16e does not have the new photographic styles. I could be wrong, but it seems like Apple could have put this easily on this phone despite it not having camera control. It just seems a little petty to me. When it comes to video, it can take up to 4K 60 frames per second, and it does a really good job. There are no issues when it comes to lens switching, the image quality looks great, but again, just take note that the lack of the optical image stabilization can result to a more jittery video, especially when you're moving, so you kind of have to try to be a little bit more stable. So here are a couple of things that might be worth noting, especially if you're considering the iPhone 16e. Since it only has a single camera, you can't take spatial photos and videos. It obviously doesn't have a camera control, it doesn't have a thread networking technology, and it's still using Wi-Fi 6 as opposed to Wi-Fi 7. So while testing this phone, I actually rewatched the announcement video for the iPhone 16e, and I just realized that it seemed like they were marketing this for people who are not necessarily familiar with the Apple ecosystem. For example, they were talking about Face ID and how you can use it for Apple Pay and signing into websites. They were talking about USB-C as a universal way of charging. They talked about iOS 18 and how you can customize your lock and home screen. They showed you how you could use AirDrop, AirPlay, and they also mentioned how it has the crash detection and satellite feature. And all of those things are good to know, but it made me think that all of those features, plus the features that I mentioned that are on this phone, are essential features that someone would want from their phone. But what's considered essential is definitely subjective. So who do I think would find this iPhone 16e actually essential? And the first thing that comes to mind are non-tech focused people, like my grandmother, my in-laws, my niece and nephews. Someone who just wants an iPhone for iMessage, FaceTime, AirDrop, and those essential features that we already talked about. And the iPhone 16e has that. It has Apple Intelligence, great battery life, great camera, for a lower price tag, even though it's not really that cheap. Now, I'm not saying that this is the best option at this price range, but let's be honest, there are people out there who would only consider an Apple device, and currently, this is the cheapest device that they are offering. Personally though, I think this should have been a $500 phone for it to be considered worth it, but again, that's all subjective. What do you guys think? If you guys have any questions, please let me know in the comments below. I'll try to answer them as soon as I can, and if you enjoyed watching this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you loved it, subscribe to the channel. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.